running just a touch behind. My name is Chaplain Alan Farley, and we are here today to commemorate Camp Letterman. Now, I've been coming to Gettysburg reenactments for 40 years. I'd heard the term, but I never really knew where it was, what it was, or the extent to which it helped the wounded soldiers. And I became very interested in it. And with this being the 160th anniversary of the battle, it's also the 160th anniversary of Camp Letterman. Now, if you don't know where it is or where it was, out on Route 30, if you know where the Walmart is, the Hoss restaurant, H-O-S-S, right behind the Walmart, right directly across the street is a stone marker. And up in the giant grocery store parking lot, on the far end, are a couple of historical signs and a gazebo. We were asked, because of the contribution that the United States Christian Commission made to help alleviate the suffering of the soldiers in this battle, we were asked to design a historical marker for Letterman and for the contribution of the United States Christian Commission delegates. And it was approved. Unfortunately, the company that is doing it won't have it done until the end of July. So we have made a mock-up of it, and that is what we are going to dedicate here this morning. Now, Dr. Jonathan Letterman was the medical director of the Army of the Potomac, and he's the central figure in the story of the Civil War medicine, and his innovations in the field are well documented. Dr. Letterman revolutionized medical evacuation during the Civil War by creating an ambulance corps that would influence how doctors and surgeons treated patients for generations to come. In the weeks following the Battle of Gettysburg, a massive tent hospital named after Letterman was established to care for the flood of wounded soldiers from the battlefield. It was located just off of the York Pike, which is now Route 30. After 3 days of hard fighting in and around the town of Gettysburg, the estimate of 85,000 Union troops, 75,000 Confederate troops involved in the largest field battle known through the war. The battlefield, the American Battlefield Trust, puts the casualty figures at 51 to 52,000 killed, wounded, or missing. They estimated the Union suffering at 3,155 killed, 14,529 wounded, 5,365 missing. Confederate losses, total of 3,908 killed, which was 8% more than the Union. 18,723 wounded, which was 42% higher than the Union, and 5,425 missing. The wounded were spread out everywhere following the battle, from George Spangler's farm to the Pennsylvania College. Every corps had at least a makeshift hospital, if nothing more than the men laying on their blankets out in the hot sun. Houses were used, barns were used, everything, churches, everything that could be used was used as a hospital. The situation was made even more complicated when the Union Army received orders to move in pursuit of Lee and the remnants of the Army in Northern Virginia. Dr. Letterman left 100 surgeons, 6 ambulances, 4 wagons per corps when his medical department left to follow Lee on July 6th, because they thought there would be another major engagement when they caught up with General Lee's retreating Confederates. Since the patients were spread out from one end of Gettysburg to the other, and there were not enough surgeons to cover the area, Letterman and his team's solution was the establishment of a central general hospital in Gettysburg, and 800 men a day were being loaded onto rail cars for the trip to various field hospitals, brick and mortar hospitals in Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington City. Camp Letterman was placed at its location on the George Wolfe Farm. Now, the George Wolfe Farm and this farm butt up together. They have a common boundary. And it was 1.5 miles east of town, located on his 80-acre elevated, well-drained ground that bordered by a large grove of trees proceeding, which provided fresh air, a breeze, shade, clean spring water. Also, the fact of where it was situated was was very close to the road and to the railroad tracks, so that they could get provisions in and they could get wounded back out more easily. As an advantage, an advantageous site because it's a high ground, abundant spring water, and close proximity to the York Road and Gettysburg Railroad, Letterman wrote. The location of Camp Letterman meant, and I've already explained that, by the end of July, some 2,700 Union soldiers and 1,300 Confederates were relocated from the field facilities to Camp Letterman. Hundreds of large hospital tents were constructed hastily due to the increasing necessity of the structures, and the high July temperatures and humidity also compounded the issue. Construction of the camp began on July 10th and was completed on July 22nd. This huge facility, which consisted of approximately 500 hospital tents, much larger than a wall tent, and each tent could hold 12 to 14 cots with mattresses, sheets, pillows, all welcome luxuries to the patients. Also included in the camp was a dead house, embalming tent, cemetery, cookhouse, and warehouse tents. These additional facilities were needed to supplement the functions of the camp due to its massive size. Camp Letterman was used for soldiers who were too sick or wounded to be taken with the rest of the Army of the Potomac on July the 6th. Depending upon the case, if a soldier's condition were to improve to the point that they could be transported, the soldier would be taken to the railroad station or to the railroad, put on cars, and moved to the brick and mortar hospitals in the towns that I've already mentioned. Camp Letterman became the largest military general hospital built on a battlefield to date. doctors, medical assistants, nurses, and patients were being moved to this new facility. And several hundred hospital tents were set up back to back. They would set those tents up so that the fronts were opposite each other and they were back to back. And between the tents would be a large enough street that they could actually drive wagons, horse and wagons, down through to be able to deliver supplies and to take patients out, whether it be to transport them out to another hospital or unfortunately take them to the dead house. The United States Sanitary Commission, as well as the United States Christian Commission, had their presence in the camp. The United States Christian Commission had 5 agents and 5 tents for sleeping their agents, for eating, and for storage. Delegates and volunteers distributed food, clothing, and medicines to Union and Confederate wounded. They encouraged them to accept Jesus Christ as their personal Savior should death overtake them, when and how that might happen, and in terms of what their life they would lead as a disabled person. Now, many of them, amputations, things like that, would leave a man disabled and despondent, and it was only through the hope that they could find in Christ that they would be able to deal with that. It is believed that Martin Willing, a New York minister, was the superintendent of the Christian Commission stationed there at Letterman. From what we have been able to gather, there were about 490 United States Christian Commission men that served from the first day of the battle. The Maryland contingent themselves, by the end of the first day, had already sent 200 delegates into Gettysburg to help with the wounded. Though no ladies received official USCC delegate credentials, dozens served informally. About 40 female nurses traveled to Camp Letterman from the Christian and Sanitary Commission, plus there were nurses from around the area, and I was told today that it was possible that daughters of the patriotic Pennsylvania Patriotic Society could have also been there. And I was told that there were some nuns, quite a few number of nuns that came from Emmitsburg to help deal with the wounded. Each nurse administered 9 times a day. They would distribute stimulants, distribute tea, and special diets, and they would bathe and dress 200 men. The USCC station and the rest of Camp Letterman remained in operation until November 10, 1863. The hospital had cared for approximately 4,200 patients in its 4-month existence. The tents were then packed up, the remaining 100 soldiers shipped home or to a brick-and-mortar hospital, and the doctors and nurses moved on to other battlefields. George Wolfe reclaimed his farm, leaving only the cemetery untouched. November 19, 1863, less than 2 weeks after the camp closed operations, President Abraham Lincoln, as you know, came and dedicated the National Cemetery there in Gettysburg. a USCC relief agent in camp for 30 days, Jane Boswell Moore, described the scene in town at the auspicious day of the incidents of Gettysburg. Good God, how many thousands of those to whom we once ministered during our month sojourn are now sleeping in bloody graves, where eternal silence and archangels' trumpets alone can be heard. The photographs in Tyson's gallery seem to speak of those times. It is decorated with flags and goodly lighted, while the band plays beneath its windows. Out of the pictures on the wall being before the Colt and Granite Hill, where the slaughter was most terrific. The almost impregnable summit of Round Top, with its rocky batteries, on which many of the unburied form now repose. The headquarters of the general commanding of the Taneytown Road, pierced with screaming shells on that awful day. She added, the plainest and smallest of houses, through his kitchen window we gaze today, and whose undaunted and forever illustrious tenants urged every man to do his duty and leave the result to all-wise providence. History will record how nobly this pledge was redeemed. Even should history be silent, the graves to be concerted tomorrow will be eloquent indeed. During Camp Letterman's service, the hospital treated over 14,000 Union soldiers and 6,800 Confederate soldiers. But more than that, 1,200 soldiers died because of their wounds, their infections, or their diseases. In 1864, the Union dead buried on George Wolfe's farm were moved to the Soldiers' National Cemetery. Between 1872 and 1873, the remains of 22 of the 27 buried Confederates were reinterred, and they were moved. The remaining 5 are still buried today where they were placed 160 years ago. Today, Camp Letterman needs to be remembered. And all of the hard work and sacrifice of the people that took care of the wounded need to be remembered. That ground needs to be purchased and saved from the developer. That grave of those 5 Confederate soldiers does not need to be torn up. They were Americans, whether you believe North or South, they were Americans. And they fought for what they believed in. The rest of the Union soldiers that were buried there, they were moved, but still, their memory needs to be honored. And we have, where's the, they deserted me. This is a mock-up of what will be placed, hopefully by the end of this month, out at the giant food store. So please, after the talk, come by and take a look. There's a picture of what Letterman looked like, how it was laid out. The Sanitary Commission had moved from this area across the road from the auto parts store there on 30 in that yellow dingy house. That was their headquarters. Then they moved from there, and I don't know where the third move took them. And I'll get out of the way in just a second. Come up and take a look at this flag, and then you look at that picture, and you'll see that flag in that picture on the tree. This flag we've documented, was owned by the Annapolis, Maryland delegation of the United States Christian Commission, and they were stationed at Camp Letterman. So this was an amazing artifact to be able to find. And I wonder if anybody might have any questions they'd like to ask about Camp Letterman. Any questions? Yes, sir.
The Confederate soldiers, you mentioned it wasn't a whole lot. What happened to all? I mean, there was how many thousands wounded, I'm sure, in the field. What did they do with all those guys?
The ambulance train, what I'm told, the ambulance train leaving out of Gettysburg, taking as many wounded as they could, was 13 miles long. A lot of them fell into the hands. They were so badly wounded they couldn't be moved. And the surgeons here, the Union surgeons, took care of them as best they could. And then when they became well enough to be transported, they were then transported to a prison. Or if they took an oath of allegiance, if they had had an amputation and couldn't fight, they would be sent home.
What about the dead? We went to the cemetery, and many, I don't think there were any.
No, there's no Confederate soldiers there.
So where were they all buried?
Just piecemeal wherever they died. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So, what was the rationale behind the fire?
I don't know that. I honestly don't know that answer to that question. It does seem curious that they would dig up 22 of the 27 and leave 5. I wish I could answer that, but I don't really know. It is possible that they weren't found, and I am told by the director that runs the Daniel Lady Farm that with Lodi detection, they believe they have possibly found where those 5 Confederate soldiers are, and of course they don't want that ground disturbed. Any other questions? All right, where's the basket with the tickets? Over here, brother. Oh, somebody has it.
Right here, Brother Farley, I got it.
Who had a question? Yes, sir.
Since the war, have any other bodies been found at random? I mean, like, did anyone planning or farming, all of a sudden, oh my God, I got Cuban bones.
I'm sure they have. What they've done, some of them may have, because they didn't want publicity and didn't want a bunch of relic hunters on their property or archaeological digs, they may not have said anything at all. Some may have turned it into the national park. But I can't remember reading anywhere happening probably closer to the end of the 1800s did they find those. I know that they found a lot of like bayonets, and they turned them into sickles, and a lot of guns were found, a lot of things like that. But as far as digging up bodies in shallow graves, that I don't know. All right, we're going to go ahead and draw a winner. And what you're going to... Yeah, does that everybody have a ticket?
If you don't, raise your hand. Be real high so you can see if you don't have a ticket. Only got one here in the front, got over there. Keep your hands up.
What you're going to win is a shirt that we designed to commemorate this dedication. It says 160th on the front, 160th the Battle of Gettysburg, Camp Letterman. You come over to our tent where the coffee wagon is, and we'll get you the size that you need. And I need, let's see, young man, would you like to draw the number? All right, 832264. 832264. We have a winner? Okay. Let's give her a big hand.